Welcome to Ask a Responsive Fundraiser, where we take your questions to a fundraising expert so that you can grow generosity. Today, we're taking your questions to Lauren Vanderpool. Lauren is passionate about helping nonprofits measure and communicate their impact. At Social Impact Solutions, she leverages data-driven insights and marketing strategies to help organizations expand their reach and increase funding. With a background in public health and evidence-based research, she equips nonprofits with the tools to measure and communicate their impact, engage stakeholders, and maximize their impact. Lauren, thanks so much for taking the time to answer some questions today.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me, Scott.
All right, we're going to jump into the first one, which is this. We've noticed that donors are responding well to more transparency and impact measurement, but quantifying and then communicating our social return on investment isn't easy. So how can we create impact reports that resonate with our donors?
This is a really good question. It's a loaded question. I could probably spend the whole time just talking about this.
Yeah.
But I would say first and foremost, you have to have the data, right? Without data, you can't have a compelling impact report. And so I don't want to assume that listeners or if those that are watching this have data. We work with a lot of nonprofits that have little to no impact metrics at all. So making sure that you have outputs at minimum, those would be things like number of people served, number of trainings provided, number of food kits distributed. Those would be output examples. And then ideally, you're taking that to the next step and you're talking about outcomes or the actual change that's happening for the people that you're serving. And so you're explaining a reduction in violence rates, a reduction in homelessness rates, or an increase in graduation rates, an increase in quality of life. Those types of changes would be ideal to highlight in an impact report. You're absolutely right that donors of all types, not just granting organizations, but family foundations, individual donors, corporate partners, we're absolutely seeing that transparency and actual impact results are what all donors and other stakeholders too are wanting to see. So once you have your impact data, really highlighting the problem that your organization solves. So a lot of nonprofits have a hard time drilling it down to one overarching problem with mission creep and a variety of programs, but we really do advocate for, it can be a big problem, it can be a broad problem, but come up with a singular problem that you are trying to solve. Communicate that problem with secondary data in your impact report so you can pull data from your local county, your city, your state. If it's a national or international problem that you're addressing, you can look up from the CDC, the World Health Organization, secondary data to really highlight that problem to help the reader or the donor understand in your impact report, why does this even matter? And then thirdly, I would advocate that you explain very clearly how your programs are addressing that problem. So again, bringing back impact data and actual change that's occurring to help the reader understand this is a very big problem and this is how this organization and these specific programs are actually tackling that problem. And that's why it matters in our community or in our state. And then the last piece would be to invite the reader, in this case, the donor, in to your journey, right? Help them understand how they can get involved and help them understand how their involvement matters. How does their involvement lead to more impact? What is if they give a gift of $100, what is that doing and why does that matter? So having a really clear call to action sprinkled throughout your impact report is another really important piece. So that's my super fast summary of how transparency and impact can be effective in fundraising.
Yeah, I know. I'm sure you could spend many, many more, minutes and hours talking about that. But I think it's really helpful the way you boiled some of that down for people for some action steps to take. All right, question number 2. We need to improve donor retention, but we're not sure how to use data to personalize outreach in a way that really feels meaningful. So what strategies can we use to turn donor insights into stronger, lasting relationships?
Yeah, this is also a great question. And I would say that, this, you didn't ask me to do this. It's a genuine response, and it's a genuine result of what we've seen for a lot of our clients. Using a software like Virtuous to have good donor data is really, really important. So when we're talking about impact data at Social Impact Solutions, we're typically referring to beneficiary data or programmatic data. But in the case of donor retention, having good donor data through a platform like Virtuous or a different CRM is really, really important. And so, oftentimes, just clear and consistent communication does a lot for donor retention. A lot of nonprofits, we've seen several resources lately that a lot of nonprofits only communicate via email with their donors on a biweekly basis at most, but more often it's a monthly or a quarterly basis via email, which really is not very often. I think in the for-profit world, we are more accustomed to sending weekly or biweekly emails, maybe even more than that. And I know that unsubscribes are a concern for some people, or inboxes being flooded. But ultimately, if you aren't communicating clearly and consistently with your donors, it's going to be hard to retain them and keep them engaged.
Right.
And so, having good donor data is a really key part of that, and looking to see where have people given in the past, and what do they care about. If John Smith has given to this program once a year at the end of the year, but he's given to the same program every year for the last 3 years, 5 years, one could rightfully assume that that's the program or the initiative that he is most passionate about. And so, again, having good donor data is really key. And then sending email campaigns that are giving updates on that particular program, on that particular initiative, sprinkling in some impact metrics along with actual stories of transformation from the field in those emails, or other communication methods would be great. And then if you don't do anything else, have a lot of gratitude in every email. Expressing a lot of gratitude and a lot of appreciation goes so far with donor retention and engagement, and it's often overlooked. So expressing a lot of gratitude, not talking too much about yourself or your organization or your programs, but really helping donors understand how they are furthering your mission, helping donors understand how their support is leading to more impact and helping you see the results that your programs are creating, along with that gratitude and appreciation, is really critical.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that piece, especially on listening and understanding your donor, that allows you to connect with them in such a meaningful way, and then actually know, here's what is the next best step for you, not just for anybody, but specifically for that person. That's super helpful. All right. Question number 3. Our team is facing staffing and capacity challenges, and it's making it difficult to execute the campaigns that we've planned. Do you have any advice for a team looking to get more done with less while still maintaining a personalized touch with donors?
Yeah, definitely. I think my answer to this question is leveraging technology and software. And so, whether it's Virtuous or a different CRM that you're using as many pieces as you can to make your processes more efficient. And I know that technology can feel like a cost burden up front. It can feel like a learning curve for your team. It creates change, and ultimately is a little bit of a change management process as well with a lot of nonprofits. But in the long run, it's absolutely worth it. And we experience this ourselves internally as a for-profit. We advocate for this with all of our nonprofit clients. There's just so many technologies and softwares available at relatively efficient costs, that it just makes everything so much more efficient, whether that's saving team members time if you are in a pinch with capacity, whether that's having better data or real-time feedback. So whether you are looking at this from a donor data standpoint, from a marketing and communications data standpoint, or more of that impact measurement side, My quick answer to team staffing and capacity concerns would be to really leverage technology and software. People obviously have a lot of varying opinions of AI, and I think that it can be helpful with content creation, though I personally don't like to lean on that or rely on that too heavily. But I think where AI can be very helpful and reliable is with workflows and processes and systems that can complement a lot of those softwares and integrations that we have talked about. So
Yeah.
yeah, I would say tech and software would be my biggest advocates there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it is really possible to engage with technology and have it be a massive part of your workflow and how you do things while maintaining a very human connection.
Mm-hmm.
It's a matter of how you use those tools, but I think that's a great point that you bring up. All right. Number 4, the last one. There's ongoing competition for funding, and we need to help our organization stand out, but we're not sure how to position ourselves effectively. Is there a process or steps that we can take to refine our messaging to stand out in a crowded landscape?
Yes. The overarching answer is yes to that question. And obviously, there's a lot that's gone on just in the last few weeks for nonprofits, and funding is getting more competitive. And so, I would have a lot of similar responses, probably, as what I said about impact reports in the first question. But and again, I'm biased, but having good impact data is one of the best things that nonprofits can do when funding gets more competitive. So it's very important anytime of the year, anytime, even when things are more normal and steady. But when funding gets more competitive, having good impact data that can be clearly communicated to, again, any type of stakeholder, not just donors, but for today's conversation, we're talking about donors. That's really critical. And then circling back to just being really clear about the problem that your organization solves and
Yeah.
how you're going about solving that problem, while at the same time highlighting and explaining what work and what progress is left to be done, right? So
Mhm.
you don't want to make it sound like you have completely accomplished what you've set out to, or if you have done that, that's amazing. But setting a stage for how, what other problems are we aiming to solve, and again highlighting outside data, so secondary data that matters and supports that, and then having primary data from your organization itself that explains, here's where we were when we started, here's where our constituents or beneficiaries are at now, 3 months after our program, 3 years after our program, and here's where we're hoping to go in the future. And then again, like I said, with impact reports, having a really clear call to action to where, funders of any type, they understand how their investment in your program or your organization is going to help you create meaningful change. And ideally, that directly aligns with the funder's mission and interests as well.
Yeah. Lauren, thank you so much for being here today to share your expertise, and bring such great experience. And I think it's been really helpful for people. So we appreciate your time and you sharing your wisdom with us today.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Scott.